So when you come to the computer, the program's often running, but whether it is or isn't, you can grab it from the bottom here. But if it wasn't running and you wanted to start it, you hit this upper left-hand corner icon, System Control Automation, and that'll bring this up. The first thing we want to do is activate the method we're going to use, and the methods that you're going to use should be listed in the procedure. But to activate a method, you go to File, Activate Method. If you go to Recent Files, it's kind of nice because if the file has been used recently, it will be on this relatively short list. I'm looking for Chem2311, so I don't see that on here. So I'm actually going to look around in this method directory and find the method. And it's not in the subdirectory, it's actually in the system subdirectory. So variant WS and then system. The files, there are some methods. There are some methods here in this directory, but most of them are actually in the variant WS directory and then the system service subdirectory there. So if I double click that, I get service, and I get a bunch more method files, lots and lots of method files. And if I go here, Chem2311, highlight that, and just say open. You'll hear the instrument, it'll click and respond a little bit as it's talking, and then the fact that this method, Chem2311, is listed here means that is the active method that we've loaded. The number of subscreens here, the 2000 subscreen, that's for the mass spec. If you want to watch your data in real time, this would be the place to go. I'm not going to use that initially. The 3900 is the GC. Okay, so it has some GC conditions, and you'll notice again we do have the method loaded, and the temperatures are at their set points, and the pressure, actual pressure is at the pressure set point. That's why we're seeing green. It's pretty good. It's still stabilizing. It's counting down. Everything's green. So the method's ready, which means all the temperatures and pressures are where they're supposed to be. Sometimes the computer and this instrument don't talk, and things don't head toward a ready position. You probably need help from myself or a teaching assistant at that point to get things talking to each other. It looks like we're going to be in pretty good shape here. So that's the mass spec. The GC looks fine. And then what we're really going to set up to get started is the autosampler. So the 8400 is the autosampler. So if I open that page, I have a list here. I'll say a little bit more at the end just to remind you, but you'll notice that a lot of times there will be a line in here. It says activate method, and it's the standby method. With a note here explaining to save helium, at the end of any series of samples, we want to switch back to the standby method. And if we have that as the last line in our sequence, it'll do that last. And so that'll automatically set it back to standby conditions. I'm going to set this up to run 2 samples. Using the Chem2311 method that I've already loaded. So I need to insert some lines. So if I highlight the 1 for row 1 and I do add, I've added a couple of lines. They actually added in front of what I wanted to be my last line. I'm actually going to delete this. I'm going to go back and add this line again at the end just as another reminder that you want to make sure the standby method is there. Okay. So before I finish on the software, what you're going to have to do is put your 2 vials, or 3 vials, or however many samples you want, into the autosampler. And you're going to need to know which sample you put into which autosampler spot. And these are all numbered. So I'm going to pick 40 and 41 for my 2 samples. Okay, so I put my 2 vials in, vial positions 40 and 41 in the autosampler. Doesn't matter what positions you use, as long as you tell the computer where the samples are. Sure is the sample name. I'm going to say this is standard A, and that was the one that went in vial 40. Okay, that's all I need to do. Sample name and make sure the vial number is correct. And then standard B, and that's the one I put in vial spot 41. So 40 and 41. Okay. You need to make sure you change those to the correct ones, otherwise it doesn't know where your samples are. Okay, again, I'm going to add, as a final line of this, I'm going to add something that will switch the method. And you may want to switch from the Chem2311 method to a different method and run some more samples. The way you would do that would be just how I'm going to add the standby method. Under the sample type, you go to the drop-down menu, and you scroll down to Activate Method. And then under the Auto Link column, you click on that, and you browse. And it's almost always going to be in the recent files, but I'm just going to browse for the standby method, open, and OK. And so you see I'm activating the method, and the method I'm activating is a standby method. Okay? So your list of samples with the descriptor, the vials positions that can be found in, and then if you want to switch methods or go to the standby method, you do that. If you were switching methods and you wanted to run, you would just add more samples on the list. This is simply a sequence of events that the instrument's going to run from the beginning to the end. In our case, it's going to run the two methods, the two standards, by the method that we've activated, then it's going to switch to the standby method. It's really nice if you put your data somewhere where you can find it. I would suggest we have a data subdirectory. We have a Chem2311 subdirectory. If I double click on that, I can even create a new folder. And a lot of groups like to just use their initials or something like that so they know their data. Okay, it's some sort of folder name. And I can say OK. And it's asking if you want to make that the default directory. It doesn't matter if you say yes or no. It will save this next set into that directory, whether it's default or not. So I'm just going to say no. So I've set up my sequence, I've put my samples in place, I've made sure I know where the data files are going to end up so I can find them, and then you're going to click Begin. This screen, nothing important here, but if you want to put your initials as the operator, that's fine. Say OK. This screen, your last chance to make some changes. It says you are going to run this method. If we had forgotten to activate the method we want to run, we would cancel out and activate the method. Okay? That is the method I want to run. And it says data will be saved in, and that is the directory. So again, if you didn't tell it where you wanted to put the data, you could cancel out and change that. But we're good to go, so I'm going to say OK. Waiting or injecting or whatever it said. In the meantime, it becomes running. So the method is active and running. There's really not a lot to be done until the first method is done running, the first sample is done running, and then you can start looking at that data while it continues running the rest of the samples in your sequence. Sort of the live data is here on the 2000, which is the mass spec screen. But if you had any doubts on whether anything was happening, you can see the time is counting up. It also tells you it's going to be a 10-minute run, so you know you have 10 minutes until you can start to look at this data. It will, again, just run every sample in your sequence in order, so you can walk away for a few hours if you like and come back and all your data will be ready and waiting for you. Fourth icon up here kind of looks like data. If I hover here, it says Review Process Mass Spec Data. If I click on that, it opens the data analysis screen. Okay. It'll often open to the last sample run, so if you've just run a sample, it'll often go to your data file. In this case, I don't have any interesting data there, but you can surf around. Again, this is just a window of trees for the folders, and if I go to 2311 and go to data, 2311, lots of folders here. So often our default will be this variant WS data, and then something in the 2311. Clicking on the data file over here on the left will load it. So this is loaded now, but if I click on that, you see the data changes. So you simply click on the data file you want, and it's loaded. I like to usually make this window a little bit bigger once I've selected my file. You're going to want to zoom in and zoom out on this data. Each of these peaks is a chemical compound. So zooming in is just a matter of dragging and making a box, and when you let go, it zooms in. So again, left click and hold